So this week I've been talking about how we work and discussing, well, I will have been discussing discussed two so far, but discussing three models for leaders to consider, embrace, wrestle with as you try and decide how you're going to lead through this current time and what your leadership now is going to set you up for as we move beyond COVID and into whatever follows. So I've discussed the McKinsey SHAPE model, the Pipe and Dunn RISE model, and today a model which is put out by a number of authors, all under the auspices of the HBR. And this is essentially thinking about three modes of human behaviour, of leadership behaviour, for three different stages of our current time. And I think particularly with what we're seeing in Australia and in certain cities in Europe and in America, the first two of these modes you're going to move backwards and forwards between. And I think preparing yourself for that forward-backward motion, or that transition, is going to be really important. So what the recommendation is to think about the way that humans behave and the way that you as a leader will behave and the way that your behaviours will impact on those of your team and your broader stakeholder community in basically not self-isolation, but what HBR refer to as sort of self-lockdown, essentially. In this sort of shelter in place is a specific term that they use. So what are the behaviours that you will use when you're in shelter in place mode, which is where Melbourne is right now in a level 4 lockdown? That set of behaviours needs to speak to very different sets of concerns, very different sets of activities to the next stage, which is emerging from lockdown. Okay? That sort of trepidation of do we, don't we? How do we go into the office? How do we interact with our customers? There's a significant shift from the one mode to the other, and then if needs be, if the worst case occurs, shifting back. So I think there's two different sets of behaviours there that I'd love to talk to you with, and in a coaching modality, build with you to figure out what your two sets of behaviours are going to be. And then the third one is really a scenario planning exercise to think about the behaviours that you're going to need to display beyond that emerging as we look post-COVID. What are the behaviours there? Will there be celebration? Will there be jubilation? Will there be remorse? Will there be grief? And all of those emotional triggers are going to drive very different sets of behaviours. And so I think, SHAPE is effective. It's a bit linear, and some of it I think you'll already be all over. RISE is very aspirational. It's very inspiring. That is part of it. But it's also very values driven, which for me I think is a fundamentally underappreciated and overlooked driver of organisational performance and a crucial contribution that leaders can make to the world. But these three phases of behaviours, they all link back to a consistent set of values and beliefs, to me, in my opinion. And I think prescribing them and essentially dictating what these three phases of behaviours are going to be when you're in this protective, defensive mode, when you're in the sort of exploratory, where do we go now mode of emerging, and then that final, what is the position we're going to find ourselves in. So that's a final model. There's sort of three phases of behaviours. If that's something you'd like to explore, then obviously I didn't write it, but I'm getting my head around it. I'd love to work through it with you.
If any of the ideas I've covered today have been of interest, you can find more of these messages at 4iLeadership.com/insights or search Tim Collings on YouTube. And if you like, subscribe to get the daily broadcast in your YouTube feed.